Welcome to another episode of the Bamateur Hour podcast. The Bamateur Hour is where amateurs, us, that would be us, talk about Alabama football, basketball, and other related sports topic. Today is Saturday, April 26, 2025, in the year of our Lord. We amateurs are blessed to be here and happy to talk about Alabama sports. I am Bama John. Today I'm joined by producer Scott, Will K, and Dr. T. Producer Scott, how are you doing today?
I feel splendid. Happy to be with you, gentlemen.
Will K, how's it going today?
Doing swell. A lovely Saturday afternoon. Can't ask for much more.
And he's headed to Stark Vegas once we jump off this.
Yeah.
Dr. T, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Played some tennis this morning, and
So he's still loading in.
the sun's coming out, so I'm doing great.
Excellent. All right, let's jump into it, guys. Today, we're going to discuss what's next for Nate Oates and Alabama Crimson Tide for the 2025-26 upcoming season, given that all that goes on in this wacky world of NIL, transfer portal, early entries into the NBA draft, and the massive player movement that happens every year in college basketball, looking like on a go-forward basis, it is crazy. So let's jump into it. We're going to look at what the roster will look like, the team, the outlook for next season, given all of these crazy dynamics. So it really is musical chairs in college basketball as you build a roster year to year. There's no more consistency of, oh, we've got 7 or 8 guys coming back. We're looking forward to the development of this freshman to see what he's going to be in his sophomore year. And we don't have that luxury of having guys stick around for the most part on one team for 3, 4, and 5 years. So it's going to be crazy, and it's really going to be challenging to Nate Oates and his staff to build a team year after year, get good team chemistry, bring in the right players, figure out how to retain the ones he can retain, and then try to year in and year out be a Sweet 16 caliber team. You can look at Danny Hurley and UConn as an example of how hard it is. They win back-to-back national championships. They lose guys, guys going to the draft, guys transferring out, and then they built what looked like could be a really good roster, and they actually gave Florida a really tough game in the round of 32. Florida escapes, did what they did the whole tournament, came back from a second-half deficit, won the game. Florida ends up cutting down the nets. UConn, though they did make it to the round of 32, is out, and they weren't able to successfully maintain that level that they had built the prior 2 years and make a Final Four run. And it just shows you how hard it is to do it year in and year out. And it's going to be really interesting to see if Nate Oates can continue on this run of 3 straight Sweet 16s, or whether the pieces won't fit to the puzzle this year, and whether in a tough SEC with all the great coaches, can he build a roster that can compete again for another Sweet 16? It's going to be fun to see. I'll be here for it. So let's jump into all that we've got going on. So a couple of things to note. Florida wins the championship. Florida owned Alabama this past season, but the rosters are going to change. So dynamics will be different. And I will say the best thing that we didn't mention on the recap was that Alabama owned Kentucky this past year, beating them 3 times in a row. Alabama had some really great wins, great season, but that's over. Now it's on to the next season. And what can we look at? So let's talk about the current roster as we go through musical chairs and roster reconstruction. So from this past year's team, Mark Sears is out of eligibility. He's gone. Grant Nelson out of eligibility. He's gone. Cliff Omari out of eligibility. He's gone. Chris Youngblood out of eligibility. Gone. 4 starters gone out the door. And the 5th starter that we'll talk about in a minute, LeBaron Philon, he's in the NBA draft. His intention is to go to the NBA, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. So those guys are gone. Sears and Nelson have really been mainstays of this roster the last 2 years, and they're going to be tough to replace. Can we do it? We'll find out. But those are big losses. Cliff, we can replace him. Youngblood, he's replaceable. Then let's look at the rest of the guys that jumped in the portal and are gone. Naas Cunningham is out the door. We really don't know what kind of player he is. We don't know what kind of impact he's going to have in college basketball. We don't know whether he's a potential pro. We don't know. We haven't seen him play enough. We don't have any idea, but he's gone to UNLV. He's going to play out in Vegas next year. Derrion Reid out the door. He's going somewhere else. The rumors are he's going to Georgia. He has not signed yet or committed yet, to my knowledge, but he's out the door. Mouhamed Dioubate, love that guy. He was the hard-head guy. He was the dude, the dirty work. Loved having him on the team. He's going to Kentucky. Not going to enjoy facing him against Kentucky next year. He's going to muck the game up, get a lot of rebounds, play great defense, get steals. He can hit open threes. He's going to be a handful to deal with, but he's gone. And then Jarin Stevenson has gone to Carolina. Gone to Carolina in my mind. Can he be an impact player at Carolina? Because I would argue he really has not been an impact player at Alabama. He's had a few good games, but you couldn't count on him night in and night out to put up 12, 14 points, get 7, 8 rebounds, block some shots, play good defense. You just didn't know what you were going to get from him. If he's going to be a pro, and a lot of people think he has the potential to do it, he's got a lot of development work to do it, and he was not developed to the level I had hoped he would reach here at Alabama. And I'm sure that's part of the reason he's gone, is that Nate Oates wasn't willing to invest in him and pay what he would have had to pay to keep him around. And I don't think Nate Oates thought he could count on him. That's just me speculating. So now let's talk to LeBaron Philon. He would have been our best returning player. He would have been the guy that with the most upside to make a jump from year 1 to year 2, which is what you want your freshman to do. You want to take the jump. But he's going pro. His intention is to go pro. I will add that he has to decide by June 15th whether or not he's going to stay in the draft. I think there's a possibility that if he's not projected as a first-round draft pick and he's projected as a second-rounder, that he pulls out of the draft and comes back to Alabama. But that's yet to be determined. But I think given his mentality and what he said, we can't count on him coming back. So who is definitely coming back given all the attrition we've had so far? You got 4 players. You got the Aiden brothers. You got Aiden Holloway coming back. You got Aiden Sherrill coming back. You've got Latrell Wrightsell coming back, but he's coming back off an injury. And you got Houston Millette coming back, who's reportedly a really good shooter, but I don't think we know what we're going to get there. So, guys, let's talk about, before we get into the portal pickups and the freshmen, comments on the flux of the roster, what's going on so far, who's coming back. Dr. T, thoughts on kind of as we sit right now with only 4 guys coming back, thoughts on that roster and the musical chairs we're dealing with?
Well, a couple of things that stick out to me are Modi, Mouhamed Dioubate, and Derrion Reid. I really hate losing those guys as far as guys who could come back. I think they'll be hard to replace. I think you said Mouhamed Dioubate. I don't know who on this roster next year can fill his shoes. It might take a couple of guys. And then Derrion Reid, I know we don't know what he could have done, but what little bit I did see in the beginning of the year, I really liked it a lot. And big, played defense, athletic. And then, like you said, Naas, question mark. Stevenson, wasn't impressed. So I just think it might be a little bit of a setback this year. I really do. I mean, but before I jump too far ahead, but yeah, I think the guards will be great. The shooters will be great. I just don't know about the all the intangibles and the rebounding and the hard hat points. I don't know who these guys are too well. I don't know the Taylor Bol Bowen too well. I don't know Jalil Bethea too well. So yeah, I think it's a lot to be determined. And I know you know, one thing you threw out there was how soon will we know how good we'll be? I don't know. Maybe that first game against Purdue, the first big game, Purdue in November at home. That might be our first big test. If we handle that well, maybe we have a great year. We'll see. But those are my initial thoughts. I think it's going to be hard to replace Modi, Reed, and of course Sears and Nelson for sure.
And to your point on Purdue, that's going to be a marquee game. I can't wait for that. They're projected potential #1 preseason team.
Wow.
They got good players coming back. That's going to be a great test. I think we'll know a lot then, but I do think because it is early in the year, there's still a lot of development that can go on. And I do like Nate Oates' ability to develop teams and to get them playing well. It's going to be a challenge this year, but I do think it's going to be really interesting to see how we do against Purdue, particularly since we've got them here. They worked us over pretty good last year, so I'm excited to see that. All right, Will K, thoughts about where we are with this roster turnover and what we've got going on, given that we got to reconstruct the roster pretty much.
Yeah, you always want to keep the turnover ratio down, but this year it's probably the biggest we've had because Mark Sears has been here for so long. He's just been our point guard and haven't had a lot of turnover with that. But I think we're looking at a talent-wise maybe like 2022 level, It's not going to be like last year or Brandon Miller. It depends on who we get in the portal. But, to be honest, I'm not really expecting, a preseason top 5 team right now, to be completely honest. And that's fine because, NIL and everything, you're not always going to have a great team year to year, but Nate Oates can develop them how he wants to. We know he likes to shoot the three-pointer. So we'll just see who we get in these next couple months because I remember last year we got Cliff in like May. We got Grant in May the year he came, and May's coming up. So portal's not done yet. Looking at Colin Cowherd, not Cowherd, from Washington State. He might come, and he was pretty good. So we'll just
no, that's Cedric, not Colin.
Cedric
Coward. But yeah, he's a big time, and I'm glad you brought him up. We'll talk about him a little more later. But he's a big time get if we can get him from everything I can tell.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking of Colin Cowherd.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Anything else, Will T?
So.
Will K.
Well, I'm sorry, Will K. I'm taking your spot.
No, I don't think so. We'll just kind of in the what do you call it? Just the no man's land right now. You kind of just got to wait to see what happens. You're just, still got a lot of months left until basketball season. Got to go through football first, but just got to wait to see what the transfer portal does.
Dr. T, you had some.
Yeah, I was going to say, so right now, based on the way it is today, we have 10 players right now. And this next year, you can have 15, right? So the question is, how many more do we take? These days, I assume every player gets paid something. Can you afford 5 more? Or do you only need maybe 3 more, like you said, Cedric Coward or I don't know, Rylan Griffin if he came back or whoever. But yeah, I don't know if we can afford to have 15, or do you want to have 15, or is 12 a good spot? That's my question. How many more is he looking for?
Those are all interesting topics, and I don't think you can afford to pay 15 good players. So it's how much can you pay number 12, 13, 14, and 15, or you just offer those guys that are kind of the end of the bench a scholarship and promise for future money if they develop. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. I don't have any good answers there. All right, producer Scott, you've been awfully quiet. You got anything to chime in here? Or are you enjoying a siesta?
Well, quietness generally goes along with a mute button. Now I'm unmuted. So, as the newest fan to Alabama basketball, I'm very excited about this year. When we look at the 23-24, you'd say the team overachieved, but they also got, to get into the Final Four. That Tar Heel team was not all that in a bag of chips. So, they had a nice win there. And then this year, I get you got Duke and that draw, but to get smoked like that and then getting exposed by Florida the way they did, and we kind of saw where their weaknesses were, particularly with the big guys. And if you're going to have one-trick ponies in the post, then you better take some mid-range shots, and the coach doesn't like them. So what I see on paper so far is some of these new guys have much better skill sets around the basket and shooting jumpers and fadeaways. So if you can get him to stick around for 2 years, the investment to me will be worth it. I'm, as a new fan, thankful for the last 2 years of what I saw on the court by Alabama, but I just think it was time for a change. So I'm kind of glad to see this happen, to start fresh, and I'm optimistic.
I like it. So let's jump into the portal pickups. Noah Williamson, we signed him out of the portal. He's a 7-footer from Bucknell. He was the player of the year, coming from a mid-major conference. So he shot 32% from three, 62% from the free throw line, which, God, I hope he can shoot better than that. He shot 53% from the field, 7 rebounds a game, 17 points a game. To me, it's clear he's going to start at center. I don't think he would be a stretch 4. And, one of the questions I'd have is, can he and Cheryl at power forward, have him start at 3? Because Cheryl can shoot the 3. So potentially could have them both in the game. But we picked up Noah Williamson. To me, unless he's a real flop, he's going to take the place of Cliff Omari, and he's going to be an upgrade big time from the offensive standpoint. And quite honestly, I thought Cliff underachieved as a rebounder. I thought Cliff was a little bit lazy on his blockouts. He was just counting on his height to get rebounds, and he should have had a lot more rebounds than he did. I thought Nelson was a much more disciplined defensive rebounder. Ball would go up. He would put a body on somebody, go find the ball. I thought Cliff didn't do as good a job of that as I'd hoped, and Cliff certainly on the offensive end. He could dunk. He could take the alley-oop and slam it home, but he could not finish around the rim with any consistent post moves. So I think we've got an upgrade, barring a big surprise that Noah Williamson can't compete at the SEC level. I think we're going to get an upgrade at center. We got Taylor Bol Bowen from FSU. He's 6'10". He shot 41% from 3, 78% from the free throw line, averaged 8 points and 5 rebounds. I think he's going to be an impact player. So the question is, does he or does Cheryl start at the power forward? TBB is a stretch 4. I like that. I think he's got good length. He can probably help with shot blocking. I don't think he's got a lot of girth. So in terms of, muscling things up and being a rebounder, he's going to have to use position and blocking out. Not the biggest of guys, but he is long and apparently athletic. So I'm excited about that pickup. That could be good. And then Jalil Bethea is a former 5-star. He didn't have a great season at Miami, but that Miami team was terrible. Shot 32% from 3, 82% from the free throw line. And I usually think people that players that can shoot well from the free throw line, that usually translates to being good 3-point shooters. And he was highly recruited as a 5-star. So I think that's a good potential wing pickup. And he's going to be battling to start. And I like that from an offensive end, that we can probably throw 5 guys on the court that can all consistently hit threes, that have length. Oh yeah. And that's the other thing about Bethea is he's 6'5", 6'6" as well. So as long as he'll move his feet, I think he'll be able to play, he'll be able to play defense. And so we're going to be longer and taller from that standpoint from those 3 portal pickups. There are other guys that we're still going after in the portal as well, to the point, can we go from 10 to 12 or 13 quality players? I definitely think that possibility is there. So those are the 3 portal pickups and what we're seeing from there. And bye-bye Will K. We've lost him, so he's checked out for the podcast, so we'll finish it off from there. And then we've got the freshmen that are coming in. And I think those freshmen are just kind of, you don't know. They're 4-star recruits. They seem to be athletic. You got a 6'6" combo guard, 6'8" true power forward, and a 6'8" wing forward. So we've gotten bigger and more athletic. I think that's good. But, how are they going to blend together? Dr. T, any thoughts on that?
So, going into last year, we only had 4 players returning from the 24 team. I think it was Sears, Nelson, Mo, and maybe Youngblood, or is he brand new last year? I can't remember.
Yeah, Youngblood was a portal pickup.
Yeah, that's right. It was Stevenson, Sears, Nelson, and Muhammad. And I thought with those 4, at the core.
Actually, Reitzel was back, but then he got injured, so we actually had
That's
5.
right. That's right. That's right. So I felt like with those 4 or 5 players, we had a good core to build around, and there weren't as many question marks. I feel like this year there's so many question marks that I just have to, pull the reins back a little bit on the expectations this year. I mean, maybe they will be great. Maybe they'll, have great chemistry and blend well together as the season goes on. But I'm just going to be real conservative on my feelings this year about how we're going to do. Last year, after the first, 5 to 10 games, I thought this is a Final Four team maybe. And this year, like you said, I just think there's a lot of question marks. I mean, you're mentioning some great things about all these players, but as you know, I've seen a lot of great players who just don't look that great on the court for some reason here. But um, and I think there's like a, with Nate Oates' system, I feel like the Final Four, in my opinion, Final Four is which is a great place to get. I don't see us getting past that unless he learns how to develop big men better and power forwards better. I just think our system is great and it's fun, and the way he coaches is fun. But I just feel like we tend to run into these teams that have everything, have 1 through 5, all positions, pretty good players, and they're pretty deep, like UConn or Florida or Duke this year, and we don't have an answer. And I just think we run out of bullets. And I don't know if Noah Williamson is the answer, if he's going to be a great skilled big man. I just don't know him. I mean, I see his numbers, but I haven't seen him play. And these other guys, TBB and the freshmen, those guys, I don't know. I think so much is to be determined that it's just hard to get too excited. Except I do get excited about seeing new players, and who knows. But yeah, like in the 4-star recruits we have coming in, there's not one. Brandon Miller, of course, and then our best NBA prospect is leaving, most likely, uh, Phylon. And who else on the team right now is a true NBA player? Maybe none, and that's okay. But I think you need 1 or 2 of those to win the whole thing, which is what we want to do, right? So I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's the goal, and it's going to be really interesting to see if Nate Oates can keep reloading, because that's what you have to do year in and year out. Is there's so little consistency on who you don't. I just don't think in this day and age you're going to get 6, 7, 8 guys sticking around for 2 to 3 years. I think if you get 4 to 5 guys to stick around, you're doing great. So how can he reconstruct the roster? How can he bring in the right players and put them all together and create another Sweet 16, Elite 8, hopefully Final Four team? It's going to be tough to do. I have faith in Nate Oates as much as I would any coach in college basketball. He's come in here and built Alabama into a powerhouse quickly. It's been really impressive. Certainly, the Brandon Miller team was his most talented team, and due to injuries, due to some off the court issues, they kind of lost their mojo at the wrong time against San Diego State. But boy, he built a really good roster. The next year when they made the Final Four, they overachieved. That was a great year. It didn't look like they were ready to do anything heading into the heading into the NCAA tournament, because they petered out in the SEC tournament and got blown out by a Florida team that turned out to be really good the next year. But I think he knows how to identify players. He knows how to coach them up and get them to an effective offensive level. It's just, can he get over the hump and cut the nets down and really build that team that has as few holes as possible that's needed to win it all. And I think the big men, the out of bounds plays, the mid-range issues are the 3 things that are always going to be in the back of my mind when it comes down to these big games against Duke, against UConn, is can we overcome those issues and beat those teams? I don't know. Producer Scott, thoughts?
Just piggybacking off what I said before, to me, having only really watched Alabama for a year or maybe less, other than the tournament last year, given how the players were, their skill levels, and how the coach coached, they got as much out of that squad as they could this year, and they got exposed when the heat was turned up. I'm optimistic. I don't know how much you guys have watched these portal pickups. I haven't watched much. And yes, you have to take it with the grain of salt of, is the beauty I saw on the court on these highlights going to translate into a more competitive league? I think so. And I saw big guys that hit better from the free throw line, that could hit hook shots, still were decent at threes, were much more creative around the rim and driving to the basket using both hands, like the Florida bigs and like the Duke bigs. What else did I see? Fadeaway jumpers from Jalil Bethea. No real athletic drop off. He's 6'5", quick. I've the guys I watched in the portal that you think you might get, that you definitely got, and even some of these high school recruits look good. Maybe I got seduced by good highlight reels, but I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the show because, like you said, it's probably every year you're having to play this game, so it's a crapshoot. But I like our chances.
Let's talk about the potential projected starters, and we're not going to talk about if Phylon comes back. We're not going to talk about picking up Cedric, aka Colin Cowherd. We're not going to talk about if Rylan Griffin comes back. But let's just talk about the 10 guys. Who's going to start? Who would the likely starters be? Dr. T, your thoughts?
So I think you have to have Holloway at the point, and I think Cheryl has to be on the court. In my opinion, the guy is very good, big man. He's not super athletic, but he shoots the ball very well, and he's young. So who knows? He may be 6'11" this year, but he is at least 6'10". We know he's not going backwards in that category, but he's a good shooter, and I think he's only going to get better around the rim. And so you have to have him on the court. Point guard Holloway. I think the wings are going to be Reitzel and Bethea, and the center Williamson, and your power forward probably Cheryl. He could play center also, but I think it's Holloway, Reitzel, Bethea, Cheryl, and Williamson. And off the bench, I would have Taylor Bol Bowen, Millette, and then I guess the freshmen, rotate those guys in, and whoever else we pick up, whether it be Cedric Coward or whoever. But I like that starting five, though. I mean, I think that's good. It's serviceable, and you have some 3-point threats. You have a big man who can shoot, who's also a 3-point, and he's also a big presence. Noah Williamson, again, I guess he's a good shooter. I don't know, but and I don't know how skilled he is around with his back to the basket. If he has good moves, we'll see. And then right, so we know shoots 40% or more from 3-point land when he's playing well. So I think with Holloway, Reitzel, and Cheryl, and then is JBB a good shooter supposedly? I mean, I don't know. He's a former
Yeah,
5-star
yeah,
recruit.
yeah. TB, or I was going to say the TB, Taylor Bol Bowen, TBB, is a 41% shooter from three.
And at 6'10", so that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So you got a good stretch four option there, and Cheryl can hit three. So, I mean, it's going to be fun rotating those three guys among the center and power forward position to have TBB and Cheryl and Williamson. I think there's not much of a drop off. Obviously, we got to add some more size. Well, I guess Jemison can play power forward, the freshman, who he can. So that'll be four guys that you can play in those two spots. So you got plenty of minutes, and if somebody gets in foul trouble, you're not that worried about it. I'm excited about that. So, Dr. T, what are you hearing about Reitzel and his recovery? Can we expect him to be full speed come November?
I think so, based on his injury, and he had the Achilles, correct?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Achilles was what I heard.
Yeah. So based on Aaron Rodgers' recovery, and he's 40. I think Reitzel should be totally healthy and ready to go. I mean, I imagine the summer he's going to get into the summer games, summer leagues, wherever the players play, and start testing it full go. I thought what little bit I saw him dribbling at some of the games in the tournament, he looked great. Now that was just dribbling and stretching, but that was 2 months ago. So I just imagine he's probably playing right now, and then by October, I think he's 100%. Now, will his game be back to 100%? I guess that's to be determined. But I imagine by January he'll be full go, making hopefully 40% in the threes again. Hey, one thing I was going to say, John and producer Scott, is that, back on the question you had earlier, I was thinking about the past, and I get kind of upset sometimes with Coach Oates and how he coaches in a game, and inbounds plays and set plays and that kind of thing. But you kind of made me realize, John, we do have it pretty good now. I mean, we're looking at NCAA every year. It wasn't that long ago when Anthony Grant was here, 2009 and 2015, where I was like, oh, can we just get to the tournament? And then Avery Johnson, 2015 and 2019, I'm like, okay, can we get to the second round? And so he has, we are, for Alabama fans at least, this is pretty awesome. So, I mean, for us to be going to the tournament every year, and in the last 2 years or 3 years, Sweet 16, Final Four, Elite Eight, that's pretty amazing. So,
I think Scott and I would trade Nate Oates for Hubert Davis and to send Hubert to Alabama and take Nate Oates at this point. That's my feeling. What do you think, Scott?
You guys still there? I lost both of you.
Yeah, we're here.
yes,
Can you hear?
Okay. We had a little fade out. This is fun for the audience to hear how horrible we are at production. Of course, that falls in my lap.
and Bamature.
Yeah.
In the wake of the name, yes, we are true amateurs.
Well,
Thank
you two are bamatures. I'm a bumature.
That's right.
Okay. So, and speaking of that, I hear your analyses, and you're a lot smarter than me when it comes to the hardwood and probably most things. Man, I'd almost just have an open tryout, and maybe that's what he does. And you guys are, I don't know what the source of your picking the starting five is. Is he like an old school, meaning Nate Oates, a Tar Heel coach, where you give hey, a freshman can't start. We're going to let the people that have earned their stripe start, and then it's going to take me halfway through the year to yank them if they're playing poorly? Or is Nate super adventurous and open-minded? I mean, because these new guys, these 3 portal pickups, I watched them on film. I'd put them on the starting 5. So I don't know who the starting 5 is going to be.
So you like all 3 of them? You like all 3?
I like what I saw, and
Yeah.
again, I have to qualify that because they played against different competition.
Right.
And we are watching highlight reels, so it's not fair because I didn't get to see, hey, did they lose games or choke or, not be able to throw the ball in, that kind of thing. We just saw the good stuff.
Right.
But the fact that they are clearly more finesse than the bigs that were on this year's team. There's no comparison. I mean, they're playing with both hands.
That's awesome.
Driving, kind of the fade away where you're kind of you're at an angle and you're popping that.
Mhm.
It looked like the Florida and the Duke bigs.
Wow.
And
That's encouraging.
Yeah. So and even the high school kids that are on John's list, again, they just look, I don't want to say Kevin Durant, but I kind of do. It's just that whole, I can do it all.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm not the fastest, quickest guy, but when clearly in these games where the good teams could take away Alabama's known advantages, they got smoked.
Mhm.
And I just think with these kids, they're going to be able to pull another trick or two out of their bag. And maybe they have a bumpy ride at the beginning, but they may end up in the Final Four again, with a worse record.
Right. I think Coach Oates is willing to start freshmen. We've seen that before many times, but I just don't think you can, on at least on the recruiting class he has coming in. I don't see how Holloway doesn't start, and I don't see how Reitzel doesn't start. After that, maybe you're right. Maybe those 3 guys start, and Sherrill comes off the bench, or some combination of those 4 guys get the last 3 spots. But as you know, he'll play 9 to 10 players, so it may not be so important who starts as much as how much they play, probably.
I agree with that.
I agree. I think that Oates wants to get the best players out on the court, and he wants to win. And I think unlike Dean Smith in the Dean Smith era, where you let a guy put in his time, and then as a junior, senior, he was going to start, and unless you had a Michael Jordan or a James Worthy waiting, that was just so much ridiculously better. I think Dean was going to give the upperclassmen the benefit of the doubt. I don't think Nate is that way. He wants to win. He wants the best 5 guys on the court, and I think he'll switch the lineup in the season because he set Philon down. Philon was starting, then he set him down. I think Philon might have been battling through some injuries, and he put him back in the starting lineup. Heck, he held Sears out of the starting lineup one game. I think when Grant Nelson was hurting some this year, there were 1 or 2 games he didn't start. So I think he's willing to try to mix it up to get the best 5 guys in his starting lineup and go. And I think from that standpoint, a couple of things is I want it to be an open competition because I believe in that. You need the best 5 guys starting that form your best team. I mean, your best 5 individual players may not be your best team to put out there because you may have 1 or 2 guys that just don't play well within the team scheme. But Holloway is a proven SEC player, and his scoring went up once we went into SEC play. So I think Holloway is clear in a way the point guard to start. He can score at all 3 levels. He's very quick. The biggest thing about Holloway is he's just not big. He's maybe 6 feet, 6'1", and he's slight. So he might be a defensive liability, but he can run the point, and he's proven it at the SEC level. Reitzel has also proved that he can play at the SEC level. So if he's healthy, I would expect him to play given his shooting, his athleticism. I think everything else is open. And I think it's going to be a competition for those spots. And I don't see that and we'll talk about this, but who else is a point guard on this team unless Philon comes back? I don't know who the point guard would be. I think we've got to find another point guard, or we've got to find a combo guard. Maybe one of these guys coming in as a freshman can play the point when Holloway's out, or if he fouls out or gets injured. But I do think having another point guard is a weakness of this team that I'm concerned about. But I do think that Oates will put the best 5 players out there. And I like the athleticism of the guys we have. At least we know that the 3 transfer portal guys, 2 of them played in the ACC. So we know they can play Power 4 basketball. We know they can compete against other ACC teams and be effective. Williamson, I should have looked harder at his box scores last year and looked at who they played to see if he played one of these high-level teams out of conference. But I think he's likely to be the center with Sherrill or TBB at power forward. And I'm slotting Bethea in to start alongside Reitzel, but these are just my projections because I do think it's really hard to know what's going to happen. All right, guys, comments on that.
Well, I'm concerned, as you said, with our backcourt, just because, in the past, a couple of years ago, and even last year, we always had Mark Sears, we had, Quinterly, we had Jaden Bradley. It seems like we've always had 2 to 3 guys who we felt comfortable bringing the ball down the court, even under pressure. And of course, last year with both Sears and Holloway, and in Philon, that's 3 guys I'd feel comfortable running the point. And this roster, I don't know. I mean, Holloway, yes. I don't remember how good Reitzel is at the point, but I don't remember that being his strength. So yeah, I think we need to go get another guard who can handle the ball pretty well. Because as you know, and you get to March Madness, you need to have more than one good point. So yeah, I'm a little concerned about the backcourt for next year.
What about the need for another big? That was another question mark I had is, do we need one more big guy, or is our rotation, assuming the freshmen can impact, do we have enough bigs in there to compete and actually potentially have a better front court than we had last year? And I loved Nelson. And it was interesting when Nelson got hurt in the SEC tournament against Florida and went out, we fell apart in the second half. And when Nelson was out of the Robert Morris game, they had us on the ropes and they had a chance to beat us. And then they put Nelson in, and then we ended up, getting the win. And I really think it was Nelson. So do we have a better rotation of bigs this year that can do more? Because I felt besides Nelson, you couldn't count on Sherrill. Reid was hurt. Cliff Amari, it was nice as a shot blocker and intimidator at the rim, but as we saw in big time games, he wasn't able to match up with other teams that had big time post players. What do you think about our bigs or the need for another big?
Producer Scott, I want to hear your opinion on that, but I was just going to say, we have, you know, three guys 6'10" or taller, which is pretty good for us, and then we have two more 6'8" guys, according to, what the recruiting sites say about Amari Allen and London Jemison. They may be slight of build, but I feel pretty good about our I guess the front court, but as far as size goes, and especially as producer Scott was saying, they're pretty finesse and pretty good around the rim. That's probably an upgrade. I'm more concerned about the guard play, but what do you think, producer Scott?
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, I'm definitely concerned about the guard play, and I'll take. I loved watching the Alabama bigs this year, but if we're down one, let's just say there's one or even two fewer bigs that we can count on, but they can play the way these Swiss Army knife guys are. I just like that style of basketball better. It transfers better in a tournament when you're playing a variety of hot teams. And so to me, I'm always going to favor the guys with three or four tricks. And I think we're not allowed to mention Rylan Griffin. Is that right, John? Is that one of the rules?
No, we can talk about him. He's on my list of
Yeah.
potential pickups, and I
Right.
think a lot of that depends on what happens with Phylon. And does Phylon come back? And if Phylon comes back, boy, that's going to elevate this team. But I think Griffin's one of those guys waiting in the wings. But as we sit here and he's hanging out in the wind, does somebody else give him an offer and he says, "Screw you, Alabama, I'm going to wherever. I'm
Well,
going
can
back
he
to
can he
Kansas."
handle the ball? I mean, it looked to me, it looked like I know I'm being a little idealistic, but could he even take the ball up the court? If the point guard goes out for a couple series or gets in foul trouble for a while. I mean,
What
I
do you
thought he.
think? What do you think, Doctor
I mean, I
T?
think he could do a couple series, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
want him doing too much.
I
He
mean,
doesn't.
could you have like point guard by committee because you're getting this upgrade in the big skill sets. Maybe you just kind of you're just you're bending but not breaking
Right.
on the point guard, and then everyone's athletic on the court, so it just kind of averages itself out. Because again, the highlights of him playing for Kansas this year, I mean, what for Alabama, he averaged 6.3 points and he upped it to 11.2. Or no, I'm sorry, that's reverse. But the 6.3, he looked on the highlight reel like a guy who could average 20 a game. So I don't know what Kansas did wrong with him. In
He
fact,
seemed like at Alabama, he seemed to be more of a better defender than
okay,
offensive player. But I think he can guard lots of positions, which is pretty valuable. And he could shoot pretty well. But he wasn't great at creating his own shot. At least when he was here, I didn't watch him last year at Kansas. I would much prefer Phylon over him for sure if we had the choice, which I know we don't. But
sure. Yeah.
I think Phylon's much more valuable to this team. But yeah, another question I have for y'all. This is kind of a question I know we don't know the answer to, but there's a you know, there's a limit to the money we have. Okay, and I don't know what that number is, but right now, I would love to know how do you do this? Because you have these players you already have secured and you already have promised them whatever amount of money it is. And then you have Phylon who's out there. You gotta save money in case he wants to come back. And then I just don't know how you juggle all these different moving parts. I think it seems so difficult, to be a coach these days. Don't y'all?
It's crazy. I don't know how they do it, and I haven't seen anything out there about who's been promised what dollars and what the overall budget is. I'd love to know that. I'm sure they keep that close to the vest as to how much money they've got left. But if you can get Cedric Coward, he decides not to go pro, and he chooses us over Duke. Seems to me you go ahead and get his deal cut and bring him in rather than waiting on Phylon. I think there's a couple other guys. Now, I would wait on Phylon over Rylan Griffin. I would keep Griffin hanging out in the wind, but Cedric Cowherd is the real deal. He is projected to be a second rounder for sure if he goes. The question is, could he be a late first round player? But he's 38% from the three. Everybody likes him. He's 21, which, as Florida showed, having these older players on your team really elevated them, having all those guards with a lot of experience. Apparently he's athletic enough that he could potentially bring the ball up. I'm not saying he could be the point guard full time, but I think we could have point guard by committee when Holloway is out of the game. So I mean, I would secure him if we can get him. And I don't mind waiting on Griffin and trying to have him be a filler depending on what Philon does. And then I don't know how much money you have to hold back to wait to see what Philon does, because there's two other guys we're looking at in the portal. One, his name is he's a 5-star freshman named Darius Adams, or actually he's not in the portal. He's a freshman. He decommitted from UConn and he's considering Bama, and he's a 3-level scorer. So he would be a more highly rated freshman than any of the guys we brought in. I think if you can lock him up and get him in here, bring him in. And then there's a guy named Kaiten Bristow from Tarleton State who shot 46% from the field, 33% from three, 79% from the free throw line. He is 6'8" to 6'10" range in terms of size. So he would be a nice fit to have another guy alongside TBB for, a 3-and-D tall wing or a stretch 4. I think you get those guys in here, but I don't know how the numbers work and how that, and this is what's going to be really fascinating to see how things play out between now and August to round out that roster, because I don't see us going into the SEC with only 10 players. Arkansas was short on players. I think they had only 9 players when they went in, and for whatever reason, John Calipari chose not to go find 3 or 4 other guys. And even though Arkansas should have made the Sweet 16 and had Texas Tech beat, that really hurt them because of injuries and other things, just having the depth on your team. And I think Nate Oates is going to have 12 to 13 guys, and it'll be fascinating to see if he goes to 15. I don't know the answer to that, but he's not done. Nate Oates, I don't think he's done adding 1 to 2 to 3 more quality players. But what kind of money does he have? And are some of these guys willing to go to a mid-major or go to a bad Power 4 team for more money? Or would they rather be on a team like Alabama that's year in and year out competing for the Sweet 16 Final Four slot? And Nate Oates is going to allow them to shoot and play a more up-tempo offense. I think Ryler Griffin said he really appreciates Nate Oates now that he's spent a year at Kansas, and that Kansas team underachieved and really struggled. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's in the mix to come back to Alabama, is he realized that what he wanted at Kansas didn't play out, and he had it better at Alabama, and why he's considering coming back. So all this is going to be fascinating to me, just to see how all that plays out and where we end up. But I don't think we're done at 10. I think Nate Oates will get us to at least 12 to 13 players. Can we add 1 or 2 more high impact players that can compete for a starting position? I think if we get Cedric, not Colin, but if we got Cedric Cowherd, I think he'd be competing for one of those starting wing spots along with Bethea and Reitzel. And I'd love to have that problem.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have 3 or 4 guys that you could all argue have the chance to start. That would be great. And we don't know what Millett is. We haven't really talked about Houston Millett, but he's supposed to be a really good shooter. We don't know what we have in him. So it's going to be fascinating.
I wonder,
to see how that plays out.
I wonder if we have the money to afford, like if Coward said, okay, Bama, I want to come to play for Nate Oates, and we give him X dollars, and then Philon the next week says, I'm not going to be a first round pick, I'm coming back. Do we have the money? Can we afford both guys? I wonder. Who knows?
How does that work? How does that work if Philon, the scenario you just described, but at that time Alabama goes, we got this Coward guy, now we want to go get Griffin, because maybe Griffin is cheaper because he's desperate to come back,
Right.
And maybe Nate Oates opens up his stance on the mid-range a little bit, since that's the main reason Griffin bolted. But could you say, hey, Philon, you want to come back, but it's too late, we're picking these 2 guys, or do you have to take Philon back? I don't know how it works.
I don't know.
I assume that comes down to money. I think we'd want Phylon over Griffin, but if we've run out of money and Phylon goes, okay, I can go get $800,000 a year to go to Kentucky or Arkansas or North Carolina or wherever he can shop, or go to Auburn. He can go to Auburn. He can get 800,000, and Bama's like, sorry, we've already spent our budget. We only got 300,000 left. I bet Phylon goes to the highest bidder, but I don't think he's going to go to a Mississippi State or to a Vanderbilt or go to, a low-level ACC team. I don't think we would have that issue of him choosing one of those, but I do think he'd go to the highest bidder for a team that would be in contention for a Sweet 16 if they can outbid us substantially. I think that's the problem. And these are the things that are going to be super fascinating to see how they play out. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to enjoy watching it, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think every year you probably have to reevaluate and see how much money you have, and then you have to decide: do you want um, two boardwalk players, or do you want you know 10 Baltic Avenue players? You know what I mean? I mean, it's like you can't have everything, so you have to kind of decide: do you want the one Brandon Miller and a lot of um, you know, lesser, or I feel like this year's team, Coach Oates, you know, did a great job. We had like 9 to 10 guys who were all good college players, and then that 22 team, I think we had Brandon Miller and Noah Clowney, and then a bunch of pretty good players. And I just think it's hard to have more than one, surefire NBA player these days if you want to have a pretty deep roster. I don't know how you can afford, you know, two of them unless John and producer Scott get off their wallet and start giving a lot more money. We'll see.
Not happening from here.
I could give him monopoly money.
Oh yeah, that'll spend really well.
Yeah.
Well, now, if we can get Alabama to really blow up the Bamateur hour, I might be able to afford to give them some money, but we're going to have to get an assist from the Alabama athletic department to really blow this thing up. Then, maybe
You never
I
know.
could.
You never know.
That's a form of money laundering. I like it.
Yeah, that's funny. That's really
I,
good.
I
I
like
think,
the I like the sorry to you can interrupt me, Judge. Don't you like to
no,
say,
go
I'll
for it.
take it from here?
No, I'm not ready to do that yet, but that's coming.
Okay, thank you very little. So I agree with Dr. T, or I think he he was posing the question. I'll take the 10 developable, good, solid players and take my chances. I just don't think that having the one or two stars and a bunch of scrubs is going to work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, you've got to have it. I agree with you. You got to have it. And I will take it from here. I think number one, you got to retain your best players if they're not going pro. I think that's priority number one. You've already had them in your system. You know what you have. You know what you can count on. When you've got the Mark Sears, when you've got the Grant Nelson, you got to bring those guys back. Then you got to go fill in with the highest level guys that you can afford without blowing the budget. There's a guy out there from Memphis, Haggerty. apparently he wants $4 million a year.
Wow.
You don't go do that. That's insane. But you go find the guys that you can get for, let's say, $500,000 to $1 million, to round it out, because you've got to have the highest level talent you can, but they've got to be able to fit in within your system. They got to be team players. So I think that's the formula. Retain your best players, then fill in with not the one tool guys, but the two tool, the three tool guys that have multiple capabilities to shoot, to play defense, good distributors that willing to get their hands dirty. You go find those guys. And if you look at Florida, they didn't have, at the beginning of the year, we didn't know what Florida was going to be. They
Right.
were a big upside surprise, but they did a great job of finding guys that could play college basketball at a really high level. And I don't think they had to spend an outrageous amount of money. I know they spent money, but I don't think they had to spend an outrageous amount of money to acquire some of those guys. And boy, the pieces of the puzzle fit together perfectly, and they cut the nets down. I'm sure Duke spent a bunch on Cooper Flagg, but I'm going to take Cooper Flagg if I can get that guy.
Right.
So, and really, to me, I can't fault what Duke did. They just had bad coaching and bad execution in 8 minutes of the game, and the referees let Houston play a very physical game, and they sat there and tried to milk the clock instead of playing to keep scoring and keep putting it on Houston. And it was a stupid meltdown. So I think Duke did it right. I think that Houston actually did it right by going out and addressing the fact that they didn't have good scoring guards, and they found some better 3-point shooting guys, and they really upped their team. They did it well, but I don't think you can go try to sign 3 to 5 of the most expensive guys and then have a bunch of scrubs and cut the nets down. If you look at those two UConn teams, they were 8, 9 deep, maybe 10 deep, and they had 1 or 2 high-level NBA players supplemented by really great college basketball players, supplemented by really strong role players. That's the way I see that you've got to build it. Let's see what Nate Oates does and if he can put that together. And then producer Scott and I are also going to watch what the Tar Heel Blue does, what Carolina does in trying to build their roster, because what Carolina did last year did not work. They've gone out and hired a general manager to come in, and they've done a better job of working the portal out and bringing in guys. I'm going to watch what they do as well and see what Florida does. I've heard Florida's in the mix for some of these players we're trying to get as well, that they're trying to get Cedric Coward, although supposedly it comes down to Duke and Bama. But I've heard they've put their hat in the ring and are trying to get these guys as well. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I was going to say another thing about what you were talking about had the depth. I think with Nate Oates' style of basketball, fast, 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 you got to have depth. Where maybe at Houston, you can get away with 7 or 8 guys, but I think Nate needs 9 to 10, and so because of that, you got to have 10 good college players. I mean, it'd be great to have 3 Brandon Millers, but wasn't everybody like that? So I think he's going to have to spread the money out and get 10 good players, and maybe once in a while we get a Cooper Flag or somebody like that. But that's that. The other thing you mentioned something, John. That's a good point. How do you keep your players? How do you retain the players you want to retain every year? And I think coaches have to get creative and with off the court uh, examples. Like, I don't know, I'm not a coach, but like having more team building uh, situations where guys don't want to leave. They don't want to leave even if it's another you know whatever amount of dollars. I mean, at some point they're going to leave for money, but if it's close, they're like, man, this is Tuscaloosa. I love it. I love the players. I love the family atmosphere. I love this team. We're great together. Because like even my youngest daughter plays tennis for a small Division I school, Jacksonville State. On her team, she was really, really close with 2 other freshmen on the team, and one of them is transferring because of some other issues. And it's difficult. I mean, it's just so difficult. And even though they were very close, there are other issues that impacted her decision. And so I just think if coaches can be creative in making these young men and women just not want to leave. I mean, even if the money's a little better somewhere else, they just don't want to leave this atmosphere. That's the goal, I think, for Nate Oates, is to make these guys want to stay. Whether it be just they enjoy the teammates so much, they enjoy the town, they enjoy the campus, whatever. You gotta keep the guys you want, like Mouhamed Dioubate. I mean, could we not have kept him, really? I mean, we needed him, and I don't know. I just think that's coaches have a hard time keeping players, period. And so that's the hard part. I'm sure Nate Oates goes through every year, is how do I keep these guys? I know he did not want to lose Modi. I know he wanted Mouhamed Dioubate, and I'm sure he's thinking, how could I have kept him?
What I heard about that, Rick,
Yeah.
is that Mouhamed Dioubate wanted to be guaranteed a starting role, and I think Nate couldn't do that, and there may have been a little bit of a money issue as well. But I think the biggest thing was that, God, you got to love Mo D, but could you count on him on the offensive end
Right.
in Nate Oates' system to put up game in and game out and be a starter? Or do you say, yeah, we'll start you, and then 5 minutes into it, you need more offense and you pull him out and he's not getting the minutes he wants, even though he's a starter in name only. He's a starter, but he's not finishing at the end. So that's what I heard. And Stevenson, I think, yeah, let Stevenson go. Yeah, let Naas Reid go. Naas Cunningham go. Derrion Reid, I think I think he wanted to be a starter, and he didn't prove himself to be more effective than Aiden Sherrill. And I think, given his 5-star background and all that, there may have been some money issues there. But I think that's what was happening with those 4 guys that left, is there wasn't enough money and wasn't enough guaranteed playing time and being starters to retain them. And I'm really happy that he kept the 4 that he did. Well, we don't know about Millette, but I'm happy that Holloway, Sherrill, Reitzel are coming back. Phylon wants to go pro. But I think that's what it comes down to, is you got to identify, if you got we got these 10 guys that'll be on this team this coming year, and let's say 6 or 7 of them you really want to keep next year to roll them into next year's team. You got to identify the 3 or 4 or 5 key guys, and what's it going to take to keep them and to retain the majority of your team that you can, that are worth keeping. And then what's that price going to be? And I think once in a while you're going to get a guy that's just going to the highest bidder, and you may really like him, but somebody else Kentucky's willing to pay twice as much as you are, and you're going to lose those guys. And that's going to be the battle.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that someone like Mo Diabate, yeah, I mean, he got like 16 minutes a game last year on average, and had, I don't know, I forgot what the stat was, 7 rebounds maybe, but yeah, I just think that might be what happened with Stevenson, because I wondered this past year, why is Stevenson starting every game? He's not giving us anything. Maybe he was promised to start. Maybe Nate Oates learned, I can't do that anymore because it's killing me. I don't know, but yeah, maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was Muhammad wants to start next year, and he just couldn't promise him that. But I would have just, if I was Nate, I would have said, hey, Mo, you played 16 minutes a game this year. I guarantee you're going to play 20 next year, whether you start or not. You're going to get 20 minutes a game, and on average, and and let's produce during those 20 minutes. Let's make the hay while you're out there. So, hey, that's unfortunate. I hate we lost him.
Yeah, and Jarin was not going to be guaranteed a starting spot here coming back. We didn't need him. He would have to develop a lot, and Carolina needed him desperately. So I think it was a situation where Carolina needed him. He knew that he could go there and be a starter or be a 6th man at worst. And Carolina had to go get bigger. They had to get guys that they think can score and defend. And even though I was not impressed with Stevenson this past year, I thought he may have regressed. Carolina does have a history of developing big men. And I think he's got a better opportunity to go there and work with that coaching staff and develop his skill set more. And quite honestly, if he goes there and cannot improve, then it just can't happen.
Right.
Because I really think the Carolina staff's good at developing big men. And Bacot was not all that his freshman and sophomore year, and he got so much better in his 8 years, or how many years he actually played in college basketball. But so I think Stevenson was going to go out the door, and he just didn't flourish in the Nate Oates style. But we have to have 8, 9, 10 guys, and those guys coming off the bench have to be able to shoot as well, because Nate Oates' system is based on guys being able to knock down threes and knock down those open long range shots and then get to the rim. So and that was where Mouhamed Dioubate, was it against Tennessee? No, it was against Auburn that we tried to do a clear out for him at the end of regulation, where he tried to go and score, and we turned the ball over, and that was just not his skill set. So I can see why Nate Oates didn't put all the resources into retaining him. I think he really wanted to retain him, but he was not we got to do everything we can to retain guy, and it's a tough loss. But I think Nate Oates is willing to say, I need more shooters, I need more scorers, and I need to add some length at the position he would play to do it. I hope it doesn't come back to bite us when we play Kentucky. I'd love to beat Kentucky 3 times again this year, like we did last year, but we shall see.
Guys, do you guys know, has Derrion Reid committed anywhere, or is he's still out there in the portal?
The rumor's Georgia.
Okay, I missed that. Okay,
That's the
so
rumor, but interestingly enough, he hasn't committed.
I,
And
I bet he's
I'm wondering if
negotiating
it's just
money
a
still.
money. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's a money deal. I
yeah.
really
He may
do.
come back still. Who knows?
I have
Funny.
not heard that. I have not heard that he's open to coming back, but
Well,
we'll see.
funny story, y'all. On A-Day game, I think I told John this off the air one time, but I went to the A-Day game for Alabama football, and I'm leaving the game. And during the game, I'm debating. We're actually having a debate: do Phylon and Reed come back next year? And so no sooner do we walk out of the stadium, I'm walking down sorority row, and you don't usually see a 6'8", 6'4" guy walking towards you, and I was like, what? And it was Reed and Phylon. And they're walking right past me. And when they got about shoulder to shoulder to me, I said, "You guys staying next year?" And they kept walking past me. And I looked back at them. They both looked back at me. They had hoodies on. They looked back and just smiled and kept walking. And the two guys I was with said, "That wasn't very promising, was it?" And I said, "No, it wasn't." So the very next morning, Derrion Reid announced he's in the portal. And then a couple of days later, Phylon said he's going to the draft. And just thought that was kind of interesting. So you can say I kind of knew what was going to happen. No, I'm
You
kidding.
did. You told me that. And that was. I think if they were coming back, yeah, we're
I
coming back.
know.
We're excited. I really do. I really think
I
they
was
would.
thinking at least a thumbs up, at least something, but they gave me nothing. So, I don't know. We'll see.
All right, guys. Parting shots. Scott, what are your parting shots?
I have one because you guys really covered that in depth. But going back to the Mo-D and the money and, am I going to have more opportunity? And when you guys were, maybe Dr. T was saying, well, hey, we'll up your money and instead of 16 minutes, we'll give you 20 plus minutes. Could you have attached a condition like, but we're going to get you this big man coach so you know how to actually dribble and take it to the goal?
Right.
I don't know if you can throw that in there, and would he appreciate? I mean, but seriously, because his future depends on that. I mean, you've got to have some foresight. Okay, I can go play in Kentucky and get a bunch of money handed to me and just be the same player. Well, how's that going to help your NBA stock? So
Right.
Well, would you believe Nate Oates if he said he was going to get you a big man coach and do all that, given his inability to do that for 6 years?
Well, you got to adapt. I hope he does it. You guys live there, man. I live in Florida. What do you want me to do? You need to knock on the door. Make it happen. Monopoly money.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if you can be creative in your contracts with these players. Can it be production oriented like the NFL, or hey, say, hey Mo, I'm going to guarantee you, 20 minutes a game on average, and if you score X points a game, you get a bonus, or this many rebounds a game, you get a bonus. Can you do that with college players? Do y'all know?
I would assume anything's negotiable.
Yeah, I would put that in there, and if you don't have the money up front to give them, you say, hey, listen, if you do this, we'll give you money. I don't know, but my parting shots are, hey, I'm looking forward to next year. The only thing it's kind of a, you know, I guess it's kind of, you can look at it two ways. Is the glass half empty or half full? The only thing I like about not having 10 guys returning is that you don't know what you're going to get, which is kind of fun. It's like opening some gifts on Christmas morning. It's like, hey, we may be amazing. I don't know, but so I'm looking forward to the unknown this year, and also who we get in the next few months or a few weeks in the transfer portal. I like some of the returning pieces, and I'm excited to see if we can develop some big men finally, and if we can this off season learn how to do some inbounds plays. Maybe Coach Oates can go to a couple camps for coaches on inbounds plays or set plays, just anything. So I'm excited for the future, and I think we're going to be NCAA bound, which I could not always say in the past. So I think we're going to go to the tournament next year, and can we? I think next year, based on today, based on April 25, if you told me we're going to the Sweet 16 next year, I would say that's pretty good. That's pretty good. But we'll see. I'm excited.
I am too. I think Bama will be a top 8 program in the SEC. I think Bama will be a top 30 program nationwide, and this is just based on the talent that we seem to have coming in, based on Nate Oates' track record, based on the quality of the players that I think are coming back. I think we'll be top 8. Now, can we be one of the 4 best teams in the SEC? It's going to be tough. Can they do it? Yeah. But I think the SEC year in and year out has great coaches now. They've got the NIL budget. I think it's going to be a tough league every year, but it gets you ready for the tournament. I'd be thrilled if they go back to the Sweet 16 again. I think that would be a great achievement to do it 4 years in a row. Am I expecting it? I can't say that I am, because I don't know how the team's going to come together, how these guys are going to do when you put them out on the court against really good teams, and how are they going to do in the middle of January, February, when you're in the middle of a long grind. How good are they going to be? But I'm optimistic. I would say I'm the most optimistic I've been in an Alabama program probably since Wimp Sanderson was at his height of his days in coaching in Alabama. I know Godfrey had a couple of good years, but I think Nate Oates has taken this program to a level it's never achieved before. So I'm optimistic, but could they be bringing in the wrong pieces, and the pieces of the puzzle will not fit properly, and this team maybe is a play-in team or gets bounced in the first round? I think that's possible, but I think the more likely scenario is they're a top 30 team. They get a top 7 seed and at least make the round of 32. I think that's a more likely outcome. So I'm excited. I'll be watching. We'll be commenting. And gentlemen, I appreciate y'all joining us for this talk this afternoon. This is the Bamateur Hour. We will talk to our listeners again soon. Everyone have a blessed weekend, and roll Tide.
Roll Tide.